Hello once again, everyone, and welcome back to Getting More Out of Ferdinand. Joining me once again is Eric, and today we're going to go over just one play because it's one that deserves a decent amount of explanation by itself. So for this, we're going into assault number 5, and the idea here is that our opponent is going to lay their leg out to be cut at. So let's talk about what that means. So that can mean a couple different things, but in general, if he is intending to slip the leg, the easiest way to invite a cut low is going to go into some form of hanging guard with the leg protruding a little bit farther than it normally does. The reason for this is that, very clearly, he's closed off his head, so that's not a very good target for me. The leg is quite open. While I could still go for the risk of something along those lines, he can very easily cover that with his tip. A not necessarily terribly aware fencer might take this as an opportunity. Another important thing to consider is that this doesn't necessarily have to be done from the onset. It's not like Eric and I just saluted and then he does this as his first gag, right? We're already in the midst of bouting and he purposefully does this is another really good time to bait someone into it. Because the more and more you get into it, it's like, oh, I can make that shot. Whereas from the beginning, you're aware, you're paying attention to your opponent. You don't necessarily have any assumptions about them yet, or you shouldn't. Now, one thing you might want to do when setting this up, go ahead and go into your hanging guard again, Eric, is you might want to go to a hanging guard more on this side. So bring the guard over a little more. There we go. Just to give this a little bit more safety, as the more protruding your tip is, the more they're aware of it, the more withdrawn and over, that doesn't necessarily look as obvious that he's looking to cut my head. Either way, though, I digress. So the idea is he's laid his leg out to be cut at, and I'm going to do what Ferdinand always does, and spring the trap with a plan in mind. So for this, I'm going to feign a cut at his leg. Now, in particular, we're going to feign a cut at the inside of the leg. Now, this is where the tricky part comes in. So when I throw this cut, Eric is going to either cut at my arm or my head with a slip, thus landing a hit. What I need to do is I'm going to cut to get him to do that slip, bend out of the way, let his sword pass, and then follow through with an attack of my own. Now there are a couple different ways you can do this. The way I like to do this is to do a little bit of shifting work. So this is only to use if I really know that he's going to go for my head or my arm. If he's someone who just swings wildly or also is not really apt at shifting, I don't want to try this because it's too risky. But the idea here is slow motion at first. I'm going to do a slight lunge, not my largest lunge, as I cut a number 5 at his thigh to get him to slip. I'm then going to push off of that foot, carry my cut across, and lean well onto my back leg. Keep your eyes on him the whole time. You do not want to be leaning forward or backward. I want to be nice and ramrod straight. At the same time, I bring my sword over, so it's now set up essentially in a form of low guard for a 2 cut. Here's that again. So, cut, void. Now I don't really have a whole lot to worry about for him hitting my leg unless I got way, way too close, because he's targeting something here. And I'm taking that and just shifting it onto my back leg. This is not particularly hard to do with a little bit of practice. The biggest thing is just be ready to push off of the foot you're putting down, which fortunately the lunge is quite apt to do, slow motion. When I put that weight onto my leg, it's not hard for me to just push my weight back onto this guy. And whereas ordinarily this would make me relatively immobile, because I'm just trying to get my upper body out of the way, this works out quite well for me. Now following that, we can return with a blow to the outside of his arm or his head. This one can be thrown very quickly, but I want to take a little bit of extra time to go over how to do it more safely, because in practice you can really belt somebody with this, and we don't necessarily want to do that since we're not in a life or death situation. So, I'm going to cut, void. Now notice that I turn my basket up. What I then do is I extend my wrist, extend my arm, and then just lunge again off of my leg in sort of a starfish motion. This allows me to reach quite far. It also allows me to power this, so even though I do it fast, I don't hit with a ton of force and can relax if need be. So here's it again, somewhat fluidly. Before I put my mask on, and we'll do it for real. You can also throw the blow to the arm, but I'd recommend going for the head if it's there. Kind of depends upon how extended his guard makes. If he's the type of person that slips and leaves their arm out, take the arm. In the case of Eric right now, it's going down, so I'm going for the head. You can take either. So, what I'm going to do now is go ahead and throw my mask and stuff on, and we'll show it real for a couple times. The biggest thing with this is, like I said, you don't do this as your first play. Even if he is exposing the leg for you to cut, don't try to do it straight out of the gate. All that's going to lead to is you not having a good read and probably ending up getting hit with an afterblow or even possibly a double hit. I want to have a good measure of Eric's range, a good measure of his capability, and I want to make sure that this is something he's trying to do. And you can tease it out of him a couple times. If he looks like he's trying to get you to cut at his leg, throw a blow, but don't actually lunge off of it. Just see if he starts twitching that hip. And if he does, then weigh your options and maybe go for it. So, the only other thing to watch out for is when you bring your arm across, keep it straight. If it bends, your elbow will be protruding away from your torso, and he may clip that. But enough talking. My stuff's on. Let's go ahead and show it a couple times. So, he's giving me the option. And that's pretty much it. We'll switch sides real quick, show it twice on that side. Good. Now as for doing this with movement, the way I would recommend you do so is with our standard drill we did before. Just every once in a while, he starts letting that leg creep out to see if I take it. It's best for him to do this if he's stationary, so this is really down to him making that invitation and me trying for it. But of course, I could also use the alternatives we went over. So for example, the fake to leg, catch, then in would also be just fine. But either way, thank you very, very much, Eric. And thank you all very much for watching. Next week, we'll be covering 2 of his plays, assaults number 6 and 7. But for now, thank you very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.